I use the word pit bull. You got to be like a pit bull, without being overwhelming or annoying to whomever you're trying to contact. And you got to have hope, and you got to have belief in yourself, and hopefully it works out for you.
Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat of Take the Doughnut, here to help you get inspiration and get donuts. I'm a motivational keynote speaker, and today I am bringing you a Take the Doughnut interview with Barry Wetcher, who is a cinematic still photographer who has worked on over 100 movies in his career. And if you remember, I also covered one of those movies with him for Rom-Com Month, Center Stage. So welcome back, Barry.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So glad to talk with you again, and this time get a chance to talk with you more about your life. But first, I have to start with a silly question. What's your favorite donut?
Well, today I can't eat donuts because I'm diabetic, but previous to that, it would be a toss-up between a glazed donut and a Boston cream donut.
Really kind of different ones there, just in case you had different moods. But I hear you. Health considerations sometimes make this a food that people can't have, and that's that. So I'm sorry I got you thinking about them, and that you're going to have to look at donut background the whole time.
Especially since today, like there are designer donuts. It's not like, years ago where you only had a choice of, like Dunkin' Donuts donuts. Today there are designer donuts and they're so good, but unfortunately they can't have them.
Oh no. Well, we'll brave on, and I'll have you looking at this background that I've got behind me this whole time. But that's okay because we're going to talk about your life. I mean, first of all, I said just a little bit about your background to start us off, but tell us more about yourself. What should we know about you?
Well, I guess a big part of me is I'm born and raised in New York, in Brooklyn to be specific. I've lived in New York almost my entire life. I just recently moved to Southern Delaware. I retired and just recently moved to Southern Delaware near the beach. So um, that's kind of, geographically about me. And I never graduated college. I did study photography briefly with somebody who became my mentor. Um, I'm trying to remember exactly what your question was.
Just tell us more about yourself in general.
Right. So again, I'm in New York, and that's a big part of who I am. And probably those listening to me hear, hopefully hear my mumbling accent. Um, and I'm, I don't know how to say this. I have a potty mouth. um, and I'm pretty straightforward in who I am. I'm brutally honest many times, and that could be good or bad, depending upon who's at the receiving end of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that quality, but I understand when people don't. I sometimes have a similar thing going on for me. No, but that's a great way to get us started there and to give us a background on you. And just to reset this conversation for people who've never seen a Take the Donut interview before, I do want to establish what the theme is here. So Take the Donut for me is another way to say carpe diem, and it's all about going after the things that you want in life.
Right.
And it comes from this weird thing that happened to me in college where I left an actual donut on a table, but it became an object lesson for me in what it looks like to leave opportunities behind. So I don't want to do that anymore. I want to take the donut instead of leaving it on the table. And so this conversation really is all about going after the things that you want in life at various stages in your life. And what does that actually look like when we go to do it? So let me ask you this question, Barry. How are you with going after goals? What has that process been like for you?
Um, I was when I was much younger, my teenage years, I got into a lot of trouble, so to speak. And then when I sort of discovered photography, I had to and decided that this is where I wanted to go, in terms of a career. I had to really hustle. So the goal at that point, and I'm talking about my early 20s, was just to get a job, supporting myself through photography. So, that was that goal then. And I didn't really know anybody in the field that could help me. Eventually, somebody did help me, but I really had to hustle. And so that was the goal. And hustling was something I was good at because that was kind of how I grew up in Brooklyn. We hustled to get whatever you wanted. So um, that was the goal to get my first job as a photographer, not as a photographer, but in photography, and that was as an assistant.
Yeah, and then I'm I'm curious. I mean, I might be skipping ahead a little bit here, but I am curious, like, because I said in the beginning you worked on over 100 movies as a photographer, and with this goal topic in mind, how much of that was you having to apply for things or put yourself out there, and how much of it was just you had started to build a network and those people like kind of kept hiring you? Once your career hit momentum, how much of it was you having to take the initiative to get the jobs that you wanted?
That's a very good question. So initially, obviously, because I didn't really know anyone, I just had a hustle. And in those days, there was something called the Village Voice, and looking help wanted, and sometimes people were looking for photographers. And I got a job through that. That wasn't my first job. Um, and then as I somehow segued into the film world, and that was all hustling also in the very beginning. But once I had established myself, I would say 75% of my work was from repeat clients or repeat actors, directors, producers, and there wasn't as much hustling that I had to do. Whereas previously, when I initially started, I had to really hustle. You had to, there was no internet back then, so you had to make cold calls, and that's much more difficult than sending somebody an anonymous person an email. So it was much more different then than it is today to hustle, so to speak. You know.
Yeah. Well, so when at this point in your life, when you think about any big like things that you want to do, and it could be a goal, it could be just anything that you're trying to do, what keeps you motivated if it's something that's going to take a little bit more time to get there?
That's another good question. So, and we're not talking about my career. You're just talking about life,
It
right?
could be anything really. I mean, I think motivation sometimes ends up being sort of a similar feeling across different arenas of your life, although if it's not, that is also an answer to this.
So, I'm like once I take hold of an idea or a cause, I'm like a pit bull. I don't let go. I don't let go. And it takes a lot for me to finally say, okay, I can't, it's not going to happen, right? Um, and that has happened recently in this community that I live in now. I don't want to go into it, but with a particular instance where I felt something was unfair, and I live in a community with an HOA and all of this, and I took hold of this one thing, and I wouldn't let go, and I just kept banging away, and I didn't win the war, so to speak, but I won the battle. So there was a compromise, but I pretty much got what I had set out to do.
It's very impressive, Barry.
And I'll say this: in the film industry, we're unionized. So I was in a union called the International Cinematographers Union, which has 10,000 members, 10,000 people. And at one point, I decided to run for a national vice president. So that was another goal. I did it. And actually, through that, I really learned once I was the vice president, and that was a volunteer, not a paid position. Once I learned that was my first real experience with politics, so to speak. And once I learned how to play politics, play the game, I got really better at being a pit bull. So,
So, I mean, the motivational question is not even the question to ask you because, you once you have something in your sights, you don't let it go. So, a different question then that may be a better fit here is whenever we go after things in life, a lot of time challenges come up, obstacles come in our way. And I'm curious for you if there's a particular brand of challenge that just keeps coming up over and over again for you. Like, no matter what it is you're doing, could be personal, could be professional, you're probably going to encounter this Achilles heel. What is it?
I'm smiling because you're going to laugh. It's my relationships with women. And I'm talking about my personal, not professionally, my personal relationships, marriages or girlfriends or partners, whatever. So yes, that's one issue that, or one challenge that um, I've never really been able to solve. So
Okay. I mean, it's honesty is the best policy here, Mary. Oh my goodness. Well, hey, that's the challenge that you continue to meet over and over again. Well,
right.
when you think back on your life, and this could be a personal or a professional answer, but what would you say is the biggest donut you've ever taken? Biggest thing you've said yes to, biggest opportunity you've gone after? What comes up for you?
I think for me, the first time I was asked to do a lighting session, and this goes back a long, long time ago, with an actor. It was my first experience where I was actually going to light the actors myself and shoot them. And, that was completely not because of the actor, but just because I was afraid I wouldn't do a good job. It was completely scary to me. And I was asked if I would consider doing it. So I could have said no, but I said yes, even though I was petrified. And I did it. And once you do something like that, then the second time it's easier and easier, and then you don't have that fear or anxiety anymore. But I can also say that, and this is aside from professionally, I'm a little. At some point in my life, I developed like claustrophobia, right? So I have to really, really challenge myself when I'm in those situations. To like sort of grin and bear it. And I do it, but it doesn't make it any easier. So,
Phobias are hard.
yeah.
Exposure therapy isn't an easy thing to do and is a very particular process. And just because you're being exposed doesn't mean it's making the situation better. So,
If I have to do an MRI, I have to be drugged. I have to be, I, I have to be stoned, so to speak. I
yeah,
can't do it.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, w what's a donut that you're taking right now? Is there anything in progress for you in terms of things that you want in your life?
I, I'm pretty much doing stuff like that. Like I said, I moved to this area, southern Delaware, by the beach. I didn't know anybody. I know a soul. And that doesn't scare me because I was used to traveling and being with, 100 people I didn't know. So I wasn't afraid of that. But um, I walked into this I discovered this small art movie theater. I walked in there and I was told they have a film festival. And I was like, oh, wow, I'd like to get involved with this. And now this is the second year where I'm a judge. I'm on the artistic committee of the festival. So kind of all those donuts I'm kind of doing, all the things that I wanted to do that I didn't really have the time to do because I'm retired now. I'm pretty much doing, you know.
How lucky is that film festival that you just sort of like appeared in front of them and said, I want to be of support to you in some way? That's such a cool opportunity in your new local area.
Right. Well, my resume, so to speak, kind of impressed them, and then once they allowed me to be on this committee and be a judge, I brought to them a whole slew of industry people. So I've upped their game, so to speak, hopefully.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And that sounds I'd love to see that festival at some point. Well, there may be people who are watching this right now who have a donut of their own that they want to take, and it could just still be an idea for them, or it could be something that they've started to move towards, but they're looking for motivation. So let's sprinkle some encouragement. And what would you say to those people from your perspective?
Um, a patience. Patience is really important. Perseverance, luck. There's, you got to have a little bit of luck, whether it's meeting the right person or being in the right place at the right time. But patience is really important. I know at times, I basically was a freelance worker for my entire life, 45 years. And, there are moments where, when one film is over, you got to find another job. And that could be scary. Um, and that can make people change their careers. But you got to have patience. You got to have the talent or the intellect or whatever it is for whatever you're going after. But I think patience is really important and perseverance. So, as I said before, for me, when I was first starting out, you had to make these cold calls, and that's not easy. Um, so you'd make a call, and then if you didn't hear back, you'd call a week later, and you'd be a little bit of a nuisance. But you had to do that. You had to do that. But today, if you email someone for a job or whatever it is, and you don't hear back in a week, you follow up with another email. You just got to keep going for it. I use the word pit bull. You got to be like a pit bull, without being overwhelming or annoying to whomever you're trying to contact. And you got to have hope, and you got to have belief in yourself, and hopefully it works out for you.
It's beautifully said. And I think, yeah, there is a line between being a pit bull and being too much. But it's amazing how much further that line is away than a lot of people think.
Right.
Um, I talk to a lot of people who are afraid to send a follow-up email, like one follow-up. It's like, this probably didn't even register for the person the first time you sent the email. I think our idea of what's too much when we're the ones sending is probably a little too careful in a lot of cases.
Because we're scared. You're scared, and you don't want to put people off, obviously. And you don't know your audience because you basically send in an email to some virtual person. Um, but you got to do it. It's the only way you're gonna get there. You got to do it. You got to network. I mean, networking is everything. Especially in my business. But networking is everything, and you just never know. I mean, you could be at a wedding or an event, that's not related to your career, and you talk to someone, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah," and then before you know, you have somebody to call for a possible job.
Yeah.
And you just never know. It's life. You just never know. So the more you put yourself out there, the better your odds are.
So true. Well, for those who want to stay in touch with what you're up to or who want to see things that you're working on, is there a way we can follow you? Or if not, did you want to plug the film festival?
I'm not a big plugger, but yeah, if you'd like to see my work, you can. I'm on Instagram, and my account is my name, Barry Wetcher, Wetcher, and the festival that I'm involved with is called the Rehoboth Beach International Film Festival, and it's in southern Delaware, and it happens in November.
Perfect. I'll be sure to put links to those things in the description of the video so people can find those as easily as possible. And if you liked hearing Barry's story, everybody, be sure to like and subscribe on this video because there's so many inspirational interviews still to come. But in the meantime, Barry, thank you so much for taking some time for talking with me, for talking with all of us about what it looks like to go after opportunities in your life.
No problem. Thank you.
And to everybody who's watching this, go out there, get inspiration, get donuts. Bye.